The Employee Retention Credit from the IRS is the last major COVID relief program. Claim up to $26,000 for each employee you had on payroll. This is Marty Stewart with Disaster Loan Advisors. The IRS tax refund is newfound money for your business. Let us help you navigate the ERC program with flexible options and working together. You can relax and have peace of mind that you're in good hands. Stay safe, stay compliant, and keep more of your refund. Take the next step and schedule a free ERC consultation call with us today.
Guidance about amended 941 form for claiming the Employee Retention Credit. Once you have completed Form 941, how can you claim the credit and provide the IRS with the necessary paperwork? The response is that you must submit a separate Form 941X or 941X tax refund form to provide corrections on Form 941. Those employers who missed out on the Employee Retention Credit, ERC, in the first 2 quarters of 2021 can still benefit from it by submitting Form 941X, Adjusted Employer's Quarterly Federal Tax Return, or claim for refund. You need to know everything about amending Form 941 to receive an ERC. What are Form 941 and Form 941X? On IRS Form 941, the ERC is claimed by a qualifying employer on the employer's federal employment tax returns. Using IRS Form 941X, employers may retroactively claim the ERC if they discover that they were a qualified employer for a prior quarter and did not claim it for future quarters. How to fill out 941X for the Employee Retention Credit. You can use the following procedure for filling out the Form 941X for claiming ERC for future claims. 1. For each Form 941 that has to be corrected, use a different Form 941X. 2. To request a reimbursement for the Employee Retention Credit on Form 941X line, verify boxes on lines 2 in Part 1. Verify boxes on lines 5D in Part 2. 3. On line 18, non-refundable portion, and line 26, refundable portion, the entire amount of the ERC is shown as a negative number. The non-refundable portion and refundable portion of the ERC are calculated using Worksheet 1, which has been included on the official website of the IRS. The amount used against the employer's 6.2% portion of Social Security tax is the non-refundable portion of the ERC, as computed on Worksheet 1. The leftover amount is referred to as the refundable portion. The whole of the ERC would be entirely refundable. The employer's portion of Social Security tax is paid with the original Form 941. 4. While filing Form 941X, one has to fill line 30, where the qualifying wages for the ERC are submitted. Amounts on line 31 of File Form 941X, the Employee Retention Credit's qualified health plan expenses are recorded. 5. To explain the circumstances leading to the over-reported numbers, utilize line 37. Your eligibility for the credit. The following components must be incorporated into your explanations and should go into considerable detail. Lines on File Form 941X that are impacted. The date on which you found the mistake. Difference, amount of the math errors. The root of the type of error. Amended 941 form for the Employee Retention Credit. Looking back on the previous 2 years and the sprinter's pace at which COVID-19 payroll tax credit relief was approved, payroll accountants deserve a pat on the back. Although the regulations were frequently complex and substantiation requirements were stringent, the COVID-19 credits were precious and contributed substantially to businesses' financial stability. But unfortunately, on the earlier 2020 and 2021 Form 941 payroll tax forms, math errors and credits were overlooked. Even the most well-funded payroll tax departments struggled to keep up with the law's constant modifications, let alone those to the payroll tax form. So before it's too late, file Form 941X payroll tax return to correct underpayments and get a credit refund claim for overpayments. When employers who underreported payroll tax file an amended Form 941X or correct form for an interest-free adjustment, they should make the necessary corrections as soon as they are identified and pay the amount owed. In general, if a math error is discovered, fixed, and paid for before the statute of limitations (SOL) expires and before the deadline for submitting the next payroll tax return for the quarter in which the error is discovered, an interest-free adjustment may be made. If not, interest will accumulate on underpayments from when Form 941X is submitted until the IRS receives the payment. This is the procedure for filing Form 941X. Deadline to amend 941 form for the Employee Retention Credit. A claim for credit or refund of an overpayment of any tax imposed by this title for which a return is required must be filed by the taxpayer within 3 years from the date the return was filed or 2 years from the date the tax was paid, whichever is later, or if no return was filed, within 2 years from the date the tax was paid. Taxpayers who have overpaid a tax imposed by this title that must be paid with a stamp are permitted to claim a credit or refund within 3 years of the date the tax was paid. The SAL period for filing Form 941X refund claims is 3 years from the date the employer filed its first return or 2 years from the date the tax was paid. For a reference, see IRC Section 6511. Therefore, this can be considered the deadline for filing Form 941X or the corrections on Form 941. FAQs related to amended 941 form for claiming the employee retention credit. Can you amend Form 941 for the employee retention credit? You can amend Form 941 for ERC to correct any mistakes you might have made in Form 941. By submitting a Form 941X, employers that missed out on the ERC in the first 2 quarters of 2021 can still benefit from the ERC. How long do I have to amend 941 for the employee retention credit? Due to the 3-year statute of limitations for amending payroll tax returns, an updated return must be filed by July 2023 to be eligible for the employee retention tax credit for the 2nd quarter of 2020. This is how much time you have to amend 941 for employee retention credit. Do you have to amend your tax return for the employee retention credit? Your company is affected by the ERC's 2020 amended returns if, to acquire the ERC, you submitted a revised Form 941 for the 4th quarter of 2020 and 2021. In your 2020 tax filings, you omitted the 2020 ERC income. For any tax year when wages were withheld and an employer retention credit connected to these previously withheld wages was received in a future year, taxpayers must file an updated tax return by IRS Notice 2021-49. So, you will have to amend your tax return to claim ERC. How do I claim the employee retention credit on 941 form? For the employee retention credit, eligible employers must record their total eligible wages for each calendar quarter on their federal employment tax returns. For this purpose, Form 941 will come in handy. In addition, on Form 941, employers must also record any pay for qualified family and sick leave for which they are eligible for a credit under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, FFCRA. The employer withholds Social Security and Medicare taxes from employee earnings and reports these deductions and the employer's portion of these taxes on Form 941. Conclusion and summary to amended 941 form for claiming the employee retention credit. On September 30, 2021, the ERC program came to an end. However, qualified businesses still have up to 3 years to apply for the credit by submitting an updated payroll tax return. You often need to fill out a form to qualify for such benefits. To correct the information you haven't provided to Form 941 and submit an ERTC claim, utilize Form 941X. Then, get the help of a tax advisor to amend Form 941 and get maximum benefits of employee retention credit for your business.
As you can see, navigating the Employee Retention Credit Program is very complex and confusing to try to figure it out on your own. Even on the IRS ERC FAQ pages, it says, this page is not current. There have been several years of updates and changes to this IRS tax credit already, including 4 congressional acts and 5 updated guidances from the IRS, totaling over 3,900 pages. Who has time to sift through all that information, let alone decipher some of the confusing language and rulings? In order to stay compliant with current IRS ERC rules and regulations, expert specialized help is highly recommended. Even if your business received an SBA PPP loan, you are still eligible for the ERC credit. If you think you may not qualify, it's worth a conversation to see if your business does. Let us assist you with a complete employee retention credit process, or if you might be stuck on filling out the IRS 941X forms correctly on your own. We are here to help. Stay safe, stay compliant, keep more of your refund. Email us at support@disasterloanadvisors.com or call us toll-free at 877-463-9777 extension 3. Or visit us on the web at www.disasterloanadvisors.com/ERC for complete details on the Employee Retention Credit Program for your business.